I'm Benjamin, and I'm the CEO at PiePacker.
So Ben, talk about how this idea for PiePacker came about. It's a really interesting idea on two fronts, on the hardware end and on the software end.
Thank you. It's actually kind of funny because we started PiePacker as really, not a gaming company. We used to play around with cloud computing, and we had this technology that made cloud computing much more efficient. It's actually where our name is from. This technology was using what we call packing. So we were packing what we call pies on servers, and we bought the domain name PiePacker, and then we stick with that. But we wanted an application, and we're video games fans, so we were like, okay, let's run video games on these super optimized servers. And this is how PiePacker started to be created. We wanted to do cloud gaming differently. And when we started to look at the market, we saw all the big names like Google Stadia, Nvidia Now, PlayStation Now, and there was like, okay, we're never going to be able to create a company in such a competitive space. So we really wanted to find a niche, and we started to look at different options. One of them was retro games, and we're like, okay, retro games is interesting, but how big is it? I mean, I'm a retro game fan, but I don't know if other people love retro game or not. So what we did is we went on the internet and started to web scrap all these pirate websites where you can find ROMs, so digital versions of retro games. And after a few hundreds of these websites, we realized that there is on average every year 19 billion ROMs that is being downloaded on the internet. And this was mind-blowing. When you put this in daily active users, this is 27 million people every day using retro games. And we're like, oh my God, this is huge. Like, per comparison, Twitch is 15 million daily active users. This is twice as big as Twitch, and Twitch is worth $1.4 billion. So there is a big market, a big potential. So we were like, oh my God, let's do this. And then we were like, okay, wait a second. Why on earth will people use our service instead of, going on these pirate websites to download ROMs and do what they've been doing for years? They did not wait for PiePacker to do emulation. And the answer became very clear very quickly. None of these pirate solutions or open source solutions were offering online multiplayer. You could play these retro games by yourself or with your friends at home, but not over the internet, or it was very complicated to do it. Require some external service or setup, and it will take time. Nothing was as simple as a web browser. So this is the premise of PiePacker. We're like, okay, let's do this. Let's be better than piracy by bringing the online multiplayer. So we put this together. We do a very crappy prototype that I'm way too ashamed to share to you today, but we shared this with friends and family, and we're like, hey guys, can you help us? We created this cool new emulators, and you can play these retro games with your friends. Play it with your friends, tell us what you think. And we want to collect data. I love data. I used to be the head of analytics at Facebook and also head of research at Twitch. And everything I try to do in the company, we try to make it data-driven. So we asked them to record their screen so we can collect at least some form of data based on how they use the PiePacker prototype. 2 or 3 weeks after, they sent us back the videos, and my co-founder Jules and I are very confused. We're like, oh my God, they did not understand our product. They misused the product. It's weird. What they were doing was actually putting the game on one side of the screen, and then on the other side of the screen, they will use Zoom, Google Hangout, whatever other video conferencing tool you may think of. And they were basically hanging out. They were not playing. They were spending 10 minutes on the game, 5 minutes chatting, and be like, hey, how are you doing? I missed you. And they were using the game as a social object. And this is the exact moment PiePacker was born. PiePacker was born by accident, where we realized we were not building a gaming platform, but a social gaming platform, and this was very different.
Can you talk about how you're on the browser side of it? The whole app is browser-based. You don't need to install any kind of third-party software on your computer. You just open the browser and it works. I used it this week and it was really flawless. Just selecting games and playing them, it started right up. Can you talk about how that process work on your end? Obviously it's going to a cloud, to a server, and then it's being pushed back out as like an H.264 stream, and then I'm playing it in real time. Is that how that works?
It's similar to this, but then not only. The general thinking about the web browser, and trust me, web browser is a very common choice. It comes with so many limitations. It's really hard. But the power of a web browser is it's extremely accessible. It makes every every machine able to run a web browser. So pretty much every machine in the world capable of running PiePacker in some form. And for us, it was really important to focus on the accessibility of the service. I am a strong believer that, when you think about it and you step back and you look at the retro gaming industry, it's very similar to the music industry back in the 2000s, when you had like peer-to-peer services like Napster, and this was the default option to download music. This was the most common option. And what disrupted this industry was Spotify coming with kind of like a better option, but a very accessible option, or as accessible as the pirate solutions. So we had to focus on this. And I also believe that for entertainment in general, we should not put any barrier. Like anybody should have the rights and deserve to be to be entertained and to have access to this kind of services. So that asks two main questions. First of all, is how much material or horsepower do you need? And like here with a web browser and internet connections, very little. But the second problem is is the internet ready for cloud gaming in general? And I don't believe this is the case. I think the internet infrastructure in general is not there yet, and it will take like a few more years, if not decades, in certain countries to be there. And Google Stadia is an amazing service when you have an amazing internet connection, but when your internet connection is average, it's a bit more difficult. And guess what? Most people have an average internet connection. So we designed PiePacker to be a hybrid cloud service. So it's not only the situation you described where it's in the clouds, we also run locally the game. So when you're by yourself, the game is going to run locally in your web browser, and it's not going to use any internet. It happens directly on your device. So this is why it's like free, and you can truly enjoy if you want your friend at home and to have like the perfect emulation experience. This is the way to go. When you want to play with your friends, and like for any online multiplayer game in the world, there is some form of no matter if you like Street Fighter 5, StarCraft 2, there is always like the physical distance that is between people. And for this we use cloud basically gaming with like the video stream, and the game is running on a separate server, and then we stream it back to all the people in the game room. So the advantage of this solution over a peer-to-peer video feed is that you're not dependent on the quality of the connection of the other person or the host, because it's the server that is streaming. So the server is always in a good, it always has a good connection, and always is up and running. There is no internet issues there. So you're always going to get the best possible connection for yourself and not being affected by other users. But we also developed a solution that is similar to, I don't know if you heard of this thing called GGPO. It's basically rollback networking. So it takes the best of both worlds. It's run locally, the game, but what will happen is you will stream your inputs back and forth with the other users. And we will basically synchronize the two local instances in a way that it feels like you're playing together, but they are slightly offset by a few frames. And we roll back to the last frame every time we see there is too much delta between the two frames of the game. So this third way that is still in development, but coming hopefully very soon, is going to be excellent in more, in countries where the internet infrastructure is still in development or not available. And for us, we're very excited about bringing this kind of different approaches in a hybrid cloud system.
That's really interesting. I feel like Nintendo could learn a lot from your net code that you've been working on the server side, because that's something they've been struggling with for years, even now in 2021. Can you talk about like some of like how you license games? You have game partners for your site that you can play via the browser. Some modern and new exclusive games, as well as older games from the Super Nintendo era. Can you talk about how those relationships form and how you, I'm going to assume, are going to add more games to your library? Is it like a licensing thing, a timed thing, sort of like Netflix or streaming rights?
Sure. So when we started the conversation with licensors, it was easy because I happen to have worked for a long time in the gaming industry. I worked for EA, Ubisoft, Gameloft, and I did a lot of stuff in this industry that, I got some street cred over time. So at least they wanted to talk to us. So when we started the conversation with them, we were like, okay, so here's what we found out. We found out that you're losing this amount of money every year with piracy, and how about we start to make money together and we have a solution. And we're like, okay, tell me more, because generally people between $0 and $1 they prefer $1. And we started to show them the potential of the platform. And what was very interesting is that for a lot of these publishers, they were like, okay, it's great. It's helping us, to offer a safe space that is not, just piracy, but a controlled environment for users to really enjoy our brand and games in a safe environment. But what really interested them is the kind of people who play on PiePacker. When we developed PiePacker, the core idea was accessibility and not focus so much on the competition, but focus more on the fun and the other human beings that are playing with you. And as a result, we got a lot of people who do not self-identify as gamers who decided to join the platform. And this is why we see, for instance, like a much higher ratio than for other retro gaming platforms out there of female. We have 48% of our gamers that are female, and this is great. We love this. And a lot of people on PiePacker, they don't play other games. They were just invited by their friends, and they feel like this is cool because these are really easy to pick up arcade games, and it feels like a very safe and easy to understand environment. So publishers were like, this is interesting because you are addressing users that we don't generally have access to with a console or traditional channels. They are non-gamers or they are more casual, and this is great. And we also have hardcore gamers and people who really are into retro games. But I will say we're very mainstream as a service, which is good. It's very accessible. The licensors, what they also like is the kind of business model we have, where it's extremely similar to Spotify. We pay them by the minute played. It's as simple as this. Like if you play 1 minute on PiePacker, we're going to pay a fee to the publisher. And this model really makes sense for them. And we do revenue sharing on the 3D mask. So all the kind of like AR, augmented reality, 3D filters you can apply to your face on your webcam when you play, they're based on brands from publishers, and we do revenue sharing every time we sell them. And for them, this is a really great way to have their fans really impersonate and feel more connected to the brand and really enjoy what it's stupid, but when we played Worms with the worm heads, was so much more fun. I felt like, oh, I'm a worm among the worms, and it felt really cool. And this kind of like very unique experience is something that resonates with a lot of our partners.
So you touched on it a little bit, but that's how because your service on the browser software side is essentially free, and that's how you're able to make it free, is add revenue sharing through the 3D mask and stuff.
Yeah, like Fortnite, cosmetics. I'm a gamer at heart, and I believe in accessibility, and we have a very, strong philosophical stance of what should be a service today, and we want to be as open as possible. So if people they want to, spend money on a service, this is great, but it should not be, it shouldn't be a wall preventing them from accessing our service. They need to use the service first, see if they like it, and if they like it and want to enhance the experience, then they can buy 3D masks or access to one of our, we have also premium subscriptions, and the premium subscriptions offer something that is super advanced for people who really want to use like 100% of the platform. So for free, you get 60 games at the moment, and you can play with your friends. You have 3D mask available for free, so you can enjoy really the core of what is PiePacker. But sometimes people have their game and they want to bring it to the platform, and they're like, okay, I have this game, I bought this indie game, or I have this homebrew game that is really awesome, and I happen to have a ROM for this game that I bought on GOG or whatever, and I really want to use it with my friends. So what we do is, if you pay a subscription, we create a private, separate instance of PiePacker for you, and you can use this instance to bring your own game two ways. Physically, with the PieReader, which is the object of the Kickstarter. It's basically an accessory you plug to your computer, and you select the adapter you want based on the console you want to use. So let's say I want the Genesis console, so I can just put the adapter, and then I put my cartridge, and the game is going to load directly in PiePacker, and I can enjoy this with my friends over the internet without my friends to have, the accessory or the game. They can just directly access my video feed. So I don't send the game to them. They just see my video feed and they can play with me. The other way is with ROMs. Go ahead, Greg.
No, that's a good segue to my next question. Is like most companies, it's software all day, it's software cloud integration, but you actually have a hardware part to your service, which is really unique, especially for you. Can you talk about how that hardware works? And I'm really curious to know how the legalities of making something like that takes Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and Sega Genesis cartridges.
That's a very good question. So this project started just right after the soft launch. So soft launch is when you launch a product in just one geography, and this was in France. We had over 100,000 users with no marketing, like using PiePacker during the closed beta. And this was fantastic. And at the end of the beta, we asked them, what is your dream as a gamer when you think about PiePacker? Is there anything crazy you can do for you guys? Because you helped us to build the product. And a lot of people were like, I would love to be able to use my physical cartridges. I have a lot of them. I want to use them on PiePacker. And we started to iterate on this idea. We're like, okay, let's go with this crazy project. How about we make this daydream accessory that is going to allow people to bring their own games? But we had to do this to make sure this was a legal venture and that we were not breaking any law and regulation. At the end of the day, we are a company that is backed by different venture funds. So we're being held accountable. We also have pretty much rock stars helping us. For instance, Kenji Matsubara, the former Sega president, is a formal advisor of us. We have the co-founders from Humble Bundle, Zynga, Crunchyroll, for people like Anime Kungao is also part of this venture, and he has even invested money in our project. And we all these people, as well as our fans, to make things fair and square. So we started to look into the different components we will need to make a dumper. Basically, it reads the cartridge. And we realized that most of the patents, for instance, if I take the Sega Genesis patent, this expired in 2014. So the patent went from 1994 to 2014. So it means that it's okay if we have a pin that is similar to what is being used by a Sega Genesis to read a Sega Genesis cartridge. Now the next part of the legality was really to make sure that we were not allowed to do copies of the game. So the game is being read. It's not dumped, it's read, literally read. And so what happens is that we load the image of the game, so the ROM, in our temporary memory. It's not saved on the platform for the game to run on the emulator. And by the way, for emulators, we just posted today a nice blog post explaining which technology we're using, how do we contribute back to the open source scene, because everything we do, we try to open source it because we believe it's really important for us to give back to the community. And when we run the ROM, basically ROM is going to be run in your private space. So it's like, you run it on your Windows, and Nintendo is not going to sue Microsoft if you run RetroArch on Windows, because this is your personal space and personal use, and you sign a term of use with Microsoft. You cannot, and what's illegal is to distribute a ROM. The ROM in itself is not illegal, but distributing it is not okay. So, and this, by the way, just to be very precise, and I hear my lawyer be like, Benjamin, be precise. This is not okay in the territories where we distribute like the service. So like Europe and North America. I cannot comment on other territories where we do not do any legal investigation, but we don't distribute the product or the service there. So I'm just talking for Europe and North America.
Different regions have different rules. Yeah.
Yes. And so you cannot send the ROM to your friend, but what you can do is you can send a video signal. Twitch is doing this. When you do Twitch plays Pokemon on Twitch, you send a video signal of the game and people can interact with the game through the chats. It's a more, refined way to do things here, but works the same. The game runs on your private instance that belongs to you, and you stream a video signal, like, it's like having your friend at home watching the game on your own TV, except the TV, the wire is very long, and you put the TV in the home of your friends. So you can both play the same game, just looking at the same video feeds without compromising the ROM or sending the ROM. If you remove the cartridge at any point of the pirater, the game is going to stop. And because every like few milliseconds, we just check if the game is still there, and we can pull data from the game at any point. Does it answer your question, Greg?
Yeah, it did. I'm actually really interested about, I didn't realize that some of the patents had expired, but I guess they do expire. I'm so used to talking to copyright about copyright law that's been infinitely extended, what feels like for indefinitely, but it's a long time. I didn't know patents were that same way. Is that why, because I have to ask, because people are going to be curious, is that why you stopped at the Super Nintendo and weren't able to go to like N64 and stuff like that because they're recent? Or is the plan eventually to make an adapter that works for N64 cartridges, or maybe even take it a step further with CD-ROM like a Sega Saturn or Dreamcast?
So I'll start with the emulation side first. On the emulation side, we go as far as the PlayStation 1 right now, and anything on between the NES and the PlayStation 1, we can do it. By the way, for the PlayStation 1, we hired the person who did one of the people who worked on the PS2 emulator on the PlayStation 3. So it's someone with like a very in-depth experience of like PlayStation emulation. And we're really pushing the limit of this with this person. In terms of the hardware itself, so the first thing is we do not intend to commercialize the pirater after the Kickstarter. We have no intention of doing this at this time. Maybe it's going to change in the future, but at this time, this is just exclusive to the Kickstarter. It was more meant as a gift for the community. We're not making any money on the pirater. This is really for us a way to say thank you. In terms of the adapters, it's possible that we do other adapters in the future as one-off, or even if we hit the stretch goals during the Kickstarter campaign that at the time we're recording is not finished, we may unlock more adapters for people. It's not the legal side that is blocking us from doing more of these. It's more, like the costs. It was already extremely expensive for us to put together 3 different adapters with all the technology for this. And this is also why we did this Kickstarter. We needed money to get the R&D and the engineering team working on like such a cool project. And if we get more money from the Kickstarter, we may have enough budget to create another adapter. And you were talking about CDs. So if you look at the pirater, it was designed to be future-proof. So the shape of the pirater is also meant to have an adapter that could hold the CD-ROM too. We anticipated that. Yeah.
That's really cool. Like you said, it's the manufacturing is a whole nother ball game when it comes to making hardware and getting it out there. Like you said, you're not making any money. It can be very difficult, and especially if you're just focused on the software side, which it's mainly integration. Like it's different. It's a different beast. Do you have any partners with that, or are you guys just learning as you go with the physical hardware of the PiePacker?
So to be honest, on the hardware side, we had no experience prior to this. Was the first time we were designing hardware. We had a bunch of hardware engineers on the team, but as a company, it's the first hardware we were making. We were extremely lucky to be surrounded by very talented advisors and people who did that a lot in the past. So we made sure to learn very quickly. And even though it was like the first hardware for the company, we avoided a lot of the issues and made sure to deliver a prototype that is working very well. And that, I'm a little bit jealous because at the moment we have only one prototype available, and it's at my co-founder's home. But I cannot wait for next week for the prototype to be at my place so I can use it a lot and play the games. We have a video on the Kickstarter of the prototype and how it's being used. We're still refining the design of this, but it's definitely a learning process. And maybe we'll like this and be like, okay, maybe this is something we like and we'll like to redo in the future.
That's really cool, man. Where can people go to support? So it's the Pi Reader hardware is a Kickstarter exclusive because you can only get it if they're supporting you through Kickstarter. Where can they go to find out more information about your service, and where can they go to support you?
So they can go on the PiePacker websites. It's PP like prawn or and pp.fun, and they can directly go on the website. They have a big Kickstarter button. They can click on this and they can read the full story about the Kickstarter, and they can see the device. They can also get lifetime membership. This is also the only time we'll do this. If they want to have their private instance to run their own games, so the ROMs, they can get a premium membership. And this is the only time we will sell a lifetime membership. Then it's going to be a yearly or monthly subscription in the future, most likely. By the way, so if you get the Pi Reader, you don't need to pay any premium subscription. It's free to bring your own game, and we give for free the private instance for your Pi Reader. So it's basically a gift that comes with the Pi Reader. The premium users will of course have like some cool options. We have HD graphics for certain games, upscaling, unlimited save slots, and a bunch of like very cool perks, early access to different games, even our own games, because we're gamers and lovers of the video game industry, so we wanted to make games, of course. So we created an internal studio, and very much like Netflix originals, we do our own original games. And the first game is a bomber style game, and in the universe of Arsène Lupin. So I don't know if you watch the Netflix TV show. If you haven't watched Arsène Lupin on Netflix, go watch it. It's really, really good. I loved it. It's based on the Arsène Lupin book. Or if you watch anime, there is also Lupin the Third, which is a great anime to watch based on the same book. And basically, we have this kind of like bomber style game in this universe, and it's a lot of fun. And we are very excited for people to try it.